How's it going there, friends? This is Bill MacDonald, the writing doctor, and I want to tell you, some of you have been asking me why I haven't been posting a lot of videos lately. I've been working on a book called How to Turn Their Horns to Halos, Managing and Motivating the Hearts and Minds of Difficult Students. My heart is still into writing and math and everything else, but I just feel like there seems to be a lack of motivation and engagement when it comes to learning in the classroom, not just online, but even in person. So I'm working on this book and I should have it finished by the end of the year and I'll be able to get it out to you guys. But some of you have been asking for some guidance. So I'm going to give you an introduction to dependent clauses, learning the difference between dependent clauses that are followed by a comma and an independent clause and a punctuation, or an introductory phrase that doesn't have a subject and a predicate. So I have a little rhyme or a little saying that I've memorized, and so instead of just telling you about it, I'd rather show it to you. So this video is going to be recorded both on Facebook, but first on my YouTube page, so that you teachers who want to show it to your students can practice the little saying and practice learning when you have an independent clause that's preceded by a dependent clause, or if you just have an introductory phrase that not always needs a comma. And we'll talk about that in our video today. So here we go. I'm going to share with you. I'm going to click on share screen. Now I'm clicking on advanced and share from second camera. Content from second camera, which is my document camera. And you can still see me there on the right hand corner. I'll enlarge myself just a little bit. Hopefully that made it a little bit bigger for you guys to see. So it says introductory phrases. For those of you that are going to want to follow along, it's on page 160. We'll also be using 158 and 161 of the Dear Doc ELAR writing and reading binder. So here we go. Introductory phrases, one thing, with commas and dependent clauses. Complex sentence. A complex sentence is when you're combining a dependent clause with an independent clause and separating them by commas. So here's a little saying. First, I'm going to show you the saying. It says, to start with how, why, where, oh, when, you often put a comma, then, that would be the independent clause, and then a period, an exclamation, or a question mark. Okay, so we'll say that again. To start with how, why, where, oh, when, you often put a comma, making a low curve there, then, and then a punctuation mark. Okay, now watch me say it again, but using this stick man called Spider-Man 2. To start, there's a subject, with, there's this little web, how, why, and look at the yellow. Now that the yellow is pointing up, it's saying you're going to start with those things instead of ending with those things. So when we studied Spider-Man 1, we showed you that you can add how, why, where, oh, other opposite, or when, and then you'd have your stop signs. But in this case, we're going to learn what happens when we start with one of those, whether it's just an introductory phrase or whether it's a dependent clause. So let me say it to you with the picture. To start, I'm pretending to run with, there's my little neck, connecting my subject to my predicate. My hands lower, how. My hands higher, why. Looking around the room, where. Draw a little circle on your watch, O. Then touch your watch, O as in other or opposite. When. To start with, how, why, where. O, when. You often put a comma, then. One more time. To start with how, why, where, oh, when, you often put a comma, then your independent clause, and then your closing punctuation. Okay, so let's see a couple of those. I'm going to go backwards 2 pages before Spider-Man 1 and show you in color. Here's a couple of examples. When you start with how. Now, just as a reminder for those of you that didn't see lesson 1 with Spider-Man 1, you could say, Maria walked up to her teacher's desk to ask a question in a very quiet manner, period. If you say how she's doing it afterwards, then you don't need to decide if it's an introductory phrase or if it's a dependent clause. Since there's no subject here, then we have to have a subject and a predicate in a dependent clause. But because you're saying something, how you're doing something, and there's an unwritten rule that says whenever the phrase it has 4 words or more, then you would typically set it apart with a comma. Okay. Second how. We normally said it, my friend helped the old woman with her groceries very politely and kindly, then you wouldn't necessarily need a comma. Excuse me. But when you start with how, very politely and kindly, 2 different ways that she did it, because it's 4 words or more, then you would separate it with a comma. To start with how. To start with why, let's find out why. Normally it would be, you won't have any homework because you've been behaving so well in class today. Only a capital on you and a period at the end of today. But when you flip it around, because you've been behaving so well in class today, the subject is you. What about you? You've been behaving, because that one has a subject and a predicate. This one is called the dependent clause, followed by an independent clause. You won't have any homework. You, the new subject, having homework is the predicate. Another why, traditional way, capital. My stomach is really growling a lot right now since I haven't eaten breakfast, period. Flip the Y to the front, capital, since I have not eaten breakfast today, comma, bouncing on the table, a shorter bounce for a shorter pause. My stomach is growling a lot right now. So since I is the subject and eaten is your predicate, then yes, you would call this a dependent clause. Okay. Next one is where. To start with how, why, where. Looking for a location. There was a beautiful diamond necklace. That's right, capital. There was a beautiful diamond necklace beneath the seats at the movie theater, period. When you start with where, all we know is where and where. Put your 2 wheres together beneath the seats at the movie theater. Play a game called Come Together Right Now. You don't need a comma between both. You only need to have a comma when you're done telling me the complete where. beneath the seats at the movie theater. Since there's not a subject and a predicate, then this is just an introductory phrase that's 4 words or longer, so you do need a comma on that one. Another where, capital, the traditional way. My sister was laughing and making fun of me from across the entire room, period. And you flip it and tell me where she's at. Capital, from across the entire room. There's not a subject and a predicate there, so this is just an introductory phrase that has more than 4 words or more, so we would separate with a comma. My sister was laughing and making fun of me. Okay. Some people accidentally try to put a comma between the laughing and the making fun of me. Since there's only 2 things happening there, you can use your head as a conjunction, laughing and making fun of me, 2 different things. So have your kids, whenever there's only 2 things happening, or when we're comparing 2 things, some either or something, then we only need a conjunction, not a comma and a conjunction. Our last one, when, traditional way, capital. I love to go jogging around my neighborhood in the wee hours of the morning, period. To start with how, why, where, oh, when. Capital, in the wee hours of the morning, comma, capital. I love to go jogging around my neighborhood, period. Since that tells me in the wee hours, when, of the morning, when, 2 whens are together, then we would put the comma. And because there's not a subject and a predicate, once again, we have an introductory phrase here. Last one, traditional way, capital. The students began to celebrate in relief after the STAR test was over, period. Flip it to the front, went to start with how, why, where, oh, when. You often put a comma then. The reason I say often is, like I said, if it's a short phrase. Last night, the students began to celebrate in relief. Since last night would only be 2 words, and it's only telling me when, not a subject and predicate, I don't need a comma on that one. It's called an optional comma. And you'll see that many books will have them on less than 4 words and some won't. So please share this video with some of your teacher friends and who are struggling with dependent clauses and introductory phrases. Hopefully this will help. Capital, after the STAR test was over. The STAR test is the subject and was over. This one does have a subject and a predicate, so this is a dependent clause. And an independent clause, which is the students, what about them? They began to celebrate. Okay, and so what I've allowed you to do, students, is try to come up with your own how, and I would suggest maybe write it the normal way first. Tell me something and then tell me how you do it. Tell me something and then why you do it. Tell me something and where you do it, and then something else and when you do it, and then you can close it. You can write them again by flipping it, by saying to start with how, why, where, oh, when. Now, we'll do part 2 of this in my next video using page 161. I'll go ahead and do that with you guys tomorrow, and we can practice a little bit more on what I call sometimes around the words in 80 ways, saying a sentence in different ways. We're saying the same thing, but we're just changing the content around. So what sometimes is asked in revision is, what is the best way to write sentence blank? All that means is put the words in order that makes sense without repeating or without having a run-on. So I hope that this has been helpful to you guys. Please share this video. Message me if you have some questions. Email me at writing, the subject, _doctor spelled out at yahoo.com, and I can help you with anything else.